What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7_D. Now here's Dr. Clyde Winter's book, The Mandi in the Ancient Americas. Now, first thing I want to say this now. The Americas are much older than what a lot of these scholars are telling you. And I mentioned before how on the campus of Louisiana State University is that you have a mound that's dated older than the pyramids of Giza. You have several mounds that are here that are much older than the pyramids of Giza. So, and then obviously I mentioned before the Miami Circle, as well as a encampment which is not far from the Miami Circle that's thousands of years old. So the Americas is not the New World. And these mounds, some of these mounds are much older compared to say other mounds, but a lot of these mounds are older than what has been given to them. And like I mentioned, some of the mounds over in Louisiana are older than the pyramids of Giza. And like I mentioned, that Miami encampment or circle is older than the pyramids of Giza. So you had your black civilizations or Aboriginal civilizations here in the Americas that are much older. I want to say that firsthand. All right. I want you to look at some similarities in this book and some things that are said that you can connect the dots and just start using common sense and get out of the mindset of just thinking that you're just a slave from Africa. All right. The Mandi in the ancient Americas. All right. And I'm going to go to which page I'm going to go to in this book because there's so much information out here about our history that we're going to have to want to learn it and read it. Here we go with the Anasazi. Get clear images of it. The Mandi mentioned in the Mexican traditions of 1325 may represent the founders of the Anasazi civilization of the Four Corners section of the United States. The Anasazi is a Navajo word which means ancient ones, for the founders of the spectacular cliff dwellings and great multi-story pueblos erected on plains near San Juan, Salt, and Little Colorado rivers. Although American anthropologists accept the theory that Amerindians entered North America across the Bering Straits about 20,000 to 50,000 years ago, the Hopis, on the contrary, say their ancestors crossed the sea during their emergence to this present fourth world, arriving somewhere along the coast of Mexico or Central America, then gradually worked their way northward to settle in their present homes in the Four Corners regions. They call the original inhabitants of the cliff dwellings ancient ones. These Anastasies were probably Manding speakers. The ruins of their great stone circles are crouched low on the mesa tops or nestled in caves along the sheer canyon walls of this high desert region. These stone circles are exact replicas of stone cities, cliff dwellings found in West African areas that are formerly formed part of the Mali Empire, especially the Dogon towns. In what is now known as the Four Corners region, where the states of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona come together at a common point, the Anasazi tilted the earth and even irrigated their crops and stored some of their harvests for later use. The inscriptions from the Palaki is written in the Manding language. It was found near the ruins of cliff dwellings. The Palaki cliff dwellings are similar to the Telem cliff houses. The Malians left many inscriptions in the southwestern part of the United States. The presence of the Mandi in Four Corners is supported by the appearance of Dogon and Bambara ideograms, called petroglyphs, on rocks under the Anasazi area. Moreover, there are several tablets found in Four Corners which have been deciphered that were written in an aspect of Malinki. The Palaki inscription is also written in Mandi Sanskrit. Now I'm going to show you images right here. These are cliff dwellings. Alright. Now I want to go back and show you the cliff dwellings here. And I've showed this before. And with the Malians. I'm showing the similarities because these was basically the same people, man. And I've said that over and over again. Yeah, but what I also want to say is that when I mentioned that Malinki, you know, she was a Mandingo. Yeah, I said that her very name means Mandingo, the Mandingo girl. So our people were selling back and forth and trading all over the globe. So we weren't just situated in one location. Like I said at the beginning of this video, is that you have mounds that are here that are thousands of years older than the pyramids of Giza. But your traditional academic scholarship will just talk about everything as if in America is the new world. And America is not the new world, so we got to get that out of here. We have a lot of monuments and figures here that are much older than other places. Also, with the term petroglyphs, you see images, like painting images on rock, showing people, maybe stick figure people, hunting, gathering, swimming, but many of them also on form of like chariots and stuff. So they ride on chariots, or they ride on horseback, but a lot of them are on like what you call various different, I ain't gonna say motor devices, but a device was being pulled by a horse. So this is something that the technology our people had, this technology globally, chariot riding. They didn't do that in so-called, they didn't only do that in so-called Europe or Africa, they had that in the Americas too. And you see by looking at a lot of those petroglyphs, those images from rocks, you see that. Also, you see them on miniature boats. You see images of boats on those petroglyphs. That's how you knew a lot of them had the concept of sailing through sea, because they would not sit there and write on petroglyphs on rock, paint on rock or some kind of stone substance, showing images of them sailing in boats. So obviously there were large bodies of water that they traveled on, and then they walked an inland, or there was bodies of water that was near the areas that where they built upon, or where they constructed these these cliff dwellings. But there was, over time, that area dried up due to environmental circumstances. So we have to understand that a lot of things change due to environmental causes, not just war or invasions. Some places where it did have a large body of water, I mentioned before in other videos, it dried up, so people moved about in other areas to continue their maritime type of trade and a type of living through the sea by fishing and everything. That's their lifeblood. And once that water dried up, they had to go to another area where you find a large body of water flowing, so they can continue to do their fishing and traveling. All right. I'm going to go on for there. All right, I'm going to go on and continue to read this part. All right. Well, I'm going to skip on to another chapter. Okay. Okay. Now this one he has right here. Focus. Mounds in South America. Many mounds excavated in South America dating back to the period of Mansa Abubakari expedition to the Americas excuse me, have yielded many artifacts depicting Africans, I'm going to say black people, Aboriginal Negroes. The major centers of Malian mound habitations outside of Mexico and the United States were situated in Brazil, Panama, and Venezuela. In Brazil, there are many megalithic structures that seem to have their prototypes in Africa. I'm not going to go there, but I seen they had a prototypes in Africa. There's similar structures in Africa, just like they are in America. And I remember I said before in other videos that you have mound building structures globally. So they just weren't in Africa, they were in the Americas. They were actually also you had mounds in Europe, you had some in Asia. But also remember I said that you have mounds that are much older than the existence of Mansa Abubakar Muhammad II. All right, there were mounds that existed way before Mansa Abubakar Muhammad II. So our ancestors were building those type of structures here at a much earlier period than what they're given credit for. All right, I want to totally emphasize that. You know, like I said, I do my own research and my own studying, and then when you start doing your own research and studying, you start picking up on greater information. When you start picking up all this greater information, it is really helpful because it helps you grow and it helps you able to formalize your own information. Now, remember I mentioned Malinche, okay? He talks about here, this is in the same book by Dr. Clyde Winters, the Aztecs, all right? Many Mexicans claim that the blacks are still in their history, although some Mexicans and Euro-nuts assume that the only blacks found in Mexico today are descendants of African slaves. Unfortunately, European Africans believe that, and it's sad, but it tells you how limited they are in doing their research. This is untrue. Many Native Americans were blacks. I wouldn't call them Native American, but they're Aboriginal black people. They're true American Indians. Okay, but the Aztecs were Mandi speakers. They may be descendants of the followers of Mansa Abubakar Muhammad II when he left the Malian Empire to colonize much of America. Now, I always said that brothers and sisters were going back and forth, all right? And there's very different types of belief systems here in America, and they spoke various different types of languages here. They didn't speak like just some what you call they one little so-called tribal language. There was very different types of languages that was spoken here in America, including English, Arabic, that was spoken in Hebrew. That was all spoken here in America. All right. So when you hear people just sit and say that you're a descendant of African slave, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But that's the type of silly mindset, unfortunately, too many people have. So they have bought into being a slave from Africa. They bought into just being brought over here in a slave ship. They bought into that mess. And until you do your research, your full research, you're going to continue to believe that mess. All right. He goes on right here. He acknowledges the Aztecs were original black Native Americans, Aboriginals, who lived in Central America. The Aztecs lived in Central Mexico and founded Mexico City. The people of Central Mexico have traditionally been called Chalango. The term Chalango refers to the skin color and hair texture of Aboriginal people, black people. The Aztecs who founded Mexico City, Nahua people called the Aztecs Chalanchu, due to their dark brown, red complexion in comparison to the Native American. I'm going to stop right there. All right, I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to emphasize this. Remember, I showed you the images of Malinche, and how it sounds like Malinke and Shaniki over in West Africa, because there was always a parallel and similarity. Mound building and a lot of those structures that were here, like I said, some of them are very old, while some of them a little bit more recent. There was constantly building over time. And then when they were building over time, lots of times they'll build on top of older structures. So you build on top of structures that are older, like the stuff is close to the bottom is older, and then you just continue to build on top. So our ancestors were doing that, constantly building over time. They didn't stop. It was sort of like you're building yourself up. Well, I mentioned before, it's like you're building yourself up closer to the heavens. Higher you go. So this is a pretty good book. I I had some disagreements, but this is a good book by Dr. Clyde Winters, The Mandee in the Ancient Americas, and I talk about how uh, the Aztecs were Malian Moors, and damn, my voice is a little dry, and it's hoarse. Excuse me, and how Malinche was a Mandingo. You know what I'm saying? But the the so-called Anastasi were the same people who are known as the Mali. You know, these are the same damn Negroes. But there are very different types of so-called black people here in America. I always emphasize that. All right. And when you look at a lot of these names, like I said before, they show you some similarities. All right. So I don't I don't want people to think. Remember, with the Mali Empire, you had, like I said, you had Mansa, Abubakar, and Muhammad II, who I want to say he was an older half brother of Mansa Musa. All right, but you already had Negroes building their great civilizations here, and it was like I said, traveling back and forth because our ancestors knew the technologies of the sea. They look at the sea here on Earth as a replica of the sea in the celestial sea in the sky, but they use those at night the star patterns to basically travel at night as they sail the sea. But they always try to replicate their buildings to what they see in the celestial body of water, which is the area view, the sky. They built their structures on Earth that sort of parallel that. All right. So our ancestors were geniuses. I said this when I was on the track. How we have limited and relegated ourselves to slaves. And when you try to tell the American Negro that the original Indians were Aboriginal black people, that most black Americans are Aboriginal Indians, they'll sit there and say that we on some pretendian stuff or Native Americans. No, Native Americans are mixed Asian people slash white people slash black people. They're mixtures of those three because many of those Asians who came here, there was already a black-white mixture. Or the original Asians were black, but they are the ones you know are pale skin are a black-white mixture. You can look at some of the features; they can tell they've just been bleached out. You look at certain Asians who may have a more flatter nose or wider lips because they have been mixed. They had those features of what you call anatomically black folks, but was mixed in by white people. But they was mixed in so much that their skin color was bleached out, but certain features were kept. There's certain pronounced features that were kept there. So that's why when you look at some people today in Mexico, and people try to compare that to the Olmecs, no, the original Olmecs was straight up Negroes. These people are a a amalgamated group who are watered down from the original people, the original black people that are there, but they'll carry some traits and certain physical features because all physical features that runs a gamut comes from the so-called Negro. So I want brothers and sisters to understand that. Every single feature originates from the so-called black person. We have to understand that, and this is why I know we've been conditioned through the educational system. We get these degrees, but we're being trained to think a certain way. We're not taught to think critically and to evaluate and to question the information that's been given to us. You get some of these Negroes who sound very articulate and sound very pleasant, but they're ignorant as hell. And I'm telling you this now. When you look at those black folks in Australia, when you look at those black folks throughout the Pacific Islands, when you look at those black folks in Asia, they're just a replica of the original black people that were here in Americas. Don't just say Black people origin all over the world there, and then the Americas, we put a foreign group of people here. No, the same group of people who populate the Australia and the Pacific Islands, populated here in the Americas. That was the population here in the Americas. So that mess about you being a West African slave, it doesn't make sense because the majority of people are over here. And the constant mess saying that we hate ourselves, no, we're 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 teaching love of our true ancestral heritage. Hate is you denying this information and want to put blinders to act like this information doesn't exist, and you just want to totally ignore it because it doesn't go along what you have been programmed to believe in. We are descendant of the Aboriginal black people that were already here. Period. We're not descendant of African slaves. Yes, there were some slaves that are brought here from Europe and Africa, but majority of people were already here, and yes, we mixed in with a lot of black Europeans. But the majority of our people were already here. We have to understand that. So when you hear people say, I'm African, I'm American, you're basically saying that you're a foreigner in your own land. I've said that in other videos. You make yourself a foreigner. That's a problem. That's one of my problems with people like Umar Johnson, who's on that back to Africa stuff. Why you want to talk about go back to Africa when we're not from Africa? We're from here. This is our land. And we've been here thousands of years. Not no 400 years, not no 500 years. We've been here thousands of years here in America.